All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning with our strategic alliance partners, Trainual and EOS. This is our 53rd EO exchange, and today's topic is followed by all, building team accountability around your core processes. So let's start by meeting the duo who will be teaching us how to improve our teams. After 8 years of growing, then exiting a small business in the hospitality sector, Elizabeth Yarborough learned about the power of a business playbook. She also learned that putting one together wasn't as easy as it sounds for most business owners. She started Untangled to help business owners document their processes in a company playbook so they can onboard faster, build team accountability, and sell their businesses for a premium. She now partners with Trainual, the leading business playbook software provider, to download what's most important about a business from the leader's brains, transforming that secret sauce into clearly defined, repeatable action steps, then turning it into easy-to-use training materials for their team. Elizabeth has been an SAP with EO Nashville for 2 years, and now also has the pleasure of partnering with both the Atlanta and Charlotte chapters. When she's not working on her business, you might find Elizabeth on her yoga mat, her paddleboard named Patty, or on top of a mountain. And her fun fact, her first leadership role was the captain of her elementary school juggle team, and then she went on to be in the circus later in life. I'd like to hear more about that. Justin Cook is a certified EOS implementer with a passion for helping entrepreneurs and their leadership teams experience breakthroughs by combining simple, practical tools with energy, discipline, and a growth mindset. He's worked with hundreds of leaders across 40 plus organizations to shift their mindsets, unleash the power of their people, and get everything they want from their business. Justin's fun fact is he's looking for people to join his band, Old Crow Cover Show, that will exclusively play Sheryl Crow covers in the style of Old Crow Medicine Show. So thank you both for joining us today, and we will have time for questions after our panel presents. So please put your questions in the chat for me to pose after the presentation. Elizabeth and Justin, take it away.
All right, so I'm going to start us off, and let me just quickly share my screen. Not great at multitasking, so if I try to start while I'm doing that, it'll be terrible. Okay, so followed by all, building team accountability around your core processes. So I'm going to start by just sharing the really simple framework and the two tools that I use with clients to help them make sure that the most important things in their business are happening the right way and the best way every single time. So the first part of this is getting your processes documented. And so we use a tool called the 3-step documenter. I'm going to cover it at a really high level. But first step is simply just identifying your core processes, right? This is not about every single little thing that happens in the business. Think high level. You've got a handful of really, truly core processes. You've got a people process for how you recruit people into your organization, onboard them, manage them, retain them, exit them if you need to. You might have a marketing process for generating demand, a sales process for converting the demand into clients. You've probably got a few ops processes for how you deliver your product or service. Maybe a customer service process when the customers aren't happy. An accounting process, I hope, for managing the flow of money in and out of the business. But the idea here is that it's just a handful of core processes. And so once you identify those, we just go about documenting them at a very high level. We take a 20-80 approach to this, which just means documenting the 20% of the steps that get you 80% of the way there. Right? So many businesses go into this trying to document every little click in every software, and they end up with a 500-page SOP. And guess who reads a 500-page SOP? Nobody, because it's 500 pages. So we take a high-level approach, 20% of the steps, the major things that have to happen every single time. And then in between that, we let our people execute. Because if you're doing this right and you have the right people in the right seats, they're going to find better ways to execute that stuff than you would have documented. On that note, The other mistake that I see organizations make a lot is they start this and they just right away start documenting everything they think should happen, right? They get so eager and they just dive in. And you just need to take a step back before you do that. So when you're documenting, I would encourage you to take this approach. Start by just observing what's happening now. There's probably stuff going on that you don't even realize. Some of it good, some of it not good. So you evaluate what's working in the process, what's not working. Once you've got that figured out, look for ways to simplify, eliminate redundancy, eliminate bottlenecks, look for ways to automate with all the new tools out there. Then you can draft your process, but make sure that you bring it to your leadership team so that everybody that leads the major functions can take a look at it and give it the stamp of approval. So you approve that as a leadership team. So that's step 2, get it documented. And then step 3 is just package it. So many times people have their processes documented and I ask them, oh, okay, well, how do you get to it? And nobody in the room knows where it is. And so you've got to package this stuff in a single place. I don't know, something like maybe Trainual. I'm not soliciting, I don't work for them. But use a tool to get this stuff in one place where your people can access it easily, right? So that's getting it documented, high level. But the real magic comes in making sure that they're followed by all. And so again, we take a really simple approach to this. There's 4 points to making sure that those processes are getting followed by all. The first is you got to make sure that you train them, right? You can't just document the process and hope that people will follow it. So you train everyone that touches the process. Even if they've been doing it for 15 years, you've probably made some updates. You've eliminated some redundancy. You've made some changes. So you make sure you train every single person that touches the process. You have to repeat yourself often. You can't just train them one time and assume that they'll remember it forever. So train proactively, not just when they mess it up. You'll know they have it when they can teach it back to you. That should be your goal when you're training them. They can coach you on how to do it. So that's the first step in getting it followed by all. Once you've trained them, you want to start measuring, is the process being followed? How do you know if your processes are being followed? Well, there are a few different ways you can measure for that. So one, you can measure for compliance. Are we doing it right? I have a client that owns restaurants and there's an opening and closing checklist and it's powered by an app. And so they're measuring for 98% of that checklist to get done every morning and every evening. So they're just looking for compliance. When they're not finding it, they're taking action. You can measure for frequency. Are we doing it often enough? Think in your sales process. Maybe your salespeople have to make 30 cold calls a week in order for that to turn into 15 proposals, in order for that to turn into 5 sales. So we just start measuring, are we following the process, doing it often enough? You can also measure for outcomes. I have clients that do these really complicated home automation AV systems. You press a button on your iPad and the shades come down and the fireplace turns on, the TV turns to your favorite channel. And there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong in those. And so they also use a checklist at the end of every project to make sure everything's working. They don't have it in an app where they're looking to see if all of the checklists got filled out, but they know that if the process is being followed, they won't have to do a return trip back to those places. And so they know if the process is being followed, their return trips will be less than 2 per month. And so they're just measuring for outcome. So those are the ways that you can measure and some frameworks for that. So then what do you do if you're measuring and you uncover that the process isn't being followed? Now, if we're honest with ourselves, I know I'm guilty of this. We probably have a tendency when the process isn't being followed to manage our people by beating them over the head with it, right? And that is not effective. Dwight Eisenhower said, leadership isn't hitting people over the head. That's assault, not leadership, right? And so we don't want to just beat them over the head. We want to put the problem in front of us. We want to get really curious, dig in to solve the problem. Hey, why isn't this process being followed? There's a great book that I strongly recommend anytime you're trying to change your processes, change the behaviors in the organization. It's called Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard by Chip and Dan Heath. And they talk about three things that might be happening besides just people not wanting to follow the process. So sometimes what looks like laziness might just be exhaustion, right? I have a client, and they're a builder, and they were having part of their process was sending these really detailed project updates at the end of the day. Well, at the end of the day, that project manager has been thinking all day long, and they don't have the brain energy to type out this long, detailed project update. So they just made a shift. They created a template to update throughout the day so that that could just get sent at the end of the day. So what looks like laziness might be exhaustion. What looks like resistance might be lack of clarity. I was in an organization and we made a switch from like a local server to using G Suite. And we were constantly having issues with people putting stuff in the local server, not using the documents from the right place. And when we really dug into it, it wasn't that they didn't want to or they didn't care. It was simply that they just didn't understand how to use G Suite. They needed some training. The last one, what looks like a people issue might be a situation issue. I had a team where they were running into trouble with the salespeople updating the CRM when they were getting calls from customers. And when they really dug into it and they stopped assuming the salespeople just didn't want to do it, what they found was that a lot of these calls were coming in while the salesperson was in the car, and they were taking the call on their way to the next thing. And by the time they got to the next thing, they had completely forgotten about it. So they just put in place a little intervention for the sales coordinator to check in with the salespeople every day, every other day. Hey, any updates on these things, to make sure that stuff got in there? That's what manage looks like, right? It's not just beating them over the head with the process. So when you do that, you're going to uncover a lot of times that you need to make updates to your process. Not only will you update it as needed when you uncover those things, but you should also put a regular cadence in place. Review each of those core processes at least once a year, put it on a calendar, give ownership to somebody. Again, just looking for bottlenecks, redundancy, and new ways to automate. Once you've updated it, that starts followed by all over again. You now have to train them, measure, manage, update. This is the cycle of continuous improvement that also drives that accountability with your processes. So that's what I've got. I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth.
All right, thank you. I am also getting shared here. Here we go. Can everybody see what I have? Okay, great. Thank you, Justin. I'm a big EOS fan because I think EOS really simplifies business. Instead of us thinking, gosh, I have this problem and it could be one of a million different things and maybe nobody else has ever experienced it before, the EOS framework boils it down to 6 major components. So before you think you're done, Justin, I want to get the 6 components right because I'm going to refer to 2 of them. They're people and process are 2 of the components, data, vision. Tell me the other 2.
Issues and traction.
Issues and traction. Okay, so those 6. The process function and the people function of your business, which EOS speaks to and Justin spoke to already. What I do is help people close the gap between process and people. So getting processes shared with their people so that everyone's aligned around the same way of doing things. And Justin's already spoken to that very well. Since I work one-on-one with people specifically about process, a lot of times we dig in even deeper to if it's not working, if you think you're following the right principles, but it's still not working, what can we do to fix it? So I'm going to share what I've learned, what goes wrong, and some best practices and next steps that you can take if you understand the principles and you're still not getting the results that you want. Because at the end of the day, we don't have process for process's sake. We have it for our people to keep teams and multiple people aligned around one way of doing things so we can get consistent results. So I have found, and it's similar, but a little nuanced differences to the framework that Justin shared. So if we're not just talking about process, but specifically talking about documenting your processes and sharing them with your people, 3 things need to be true. And I'm going to define each of the 3, but just a high level look. It needs to be decided. Sounds easy, not always easy. Documented and distributed. That then helps you be able to build this culture of accountability. Justin said followed by all. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So you can call this managing, performance management, coaching, feedback, whatever phrase makes you happiest to use, then you should use. I'm saying culture of accountability, Justin said followed by all. If that's the end goal, and I think it should always be, when it comes to your processes, these 3 things need to be true. If these things are true about your processes and you're still finding something broken in your systems, it's likely not a process issue at all. It's likely a people issue. Somebody's not in the right seat or they're not being managed well. There's not adequate leadership in place. So if we have these 3 things in place, even as they grow, as our companies are growing and things are changing, and they are in your companies constantly, we're growing. And so you change, everything breaks, you find a better way, repeat. You find a better way, you decide, document, and distribute again. So I'll tell you what I mean by each. The deciding and committing to one way, a lot of times if there's a problem here, and there's not always a problem, some people are great at making decisions, others aren't. If you're erring, then it's probably in one of 2 ways. You're either committing to something too fast before you have given it enough repetition and experimenting and innovation to really land on what's the best way for now until we find a better way. So maybe moving a little bit too fast, or you're more of the perfectionist type and it takes you forever to commit to a single way of doing things because you want to be 100% sure about it. And really being, in most of the time, unless you're like a brain surgeon or a pilot, then 80 or 90% certainty about this being the best way to do this thing is the best place to land. So making a decision, maybe this is you deciding, maybe it's somebody that you hire to make this decision. You don't have to be making all of the decisions as the business owner. Maybe it's the person executing the task or the process who's doing the deciding. Either way, there needs to be a clear decision on what the process is. The documenting, and Justin gave a great 3-step documenter to kind of, because a lot of times people ask me, well, I don't know what to document. And I think that EOS template is really helpful to get started. I would add, because it's still not always as easy as just picking up a pen and writing down everything you know, or opening up a Word doc and typing out the way that you do this thing. So I would add here, if you're delegating tasks, things like take an order, process an invoice, post a blog post, install a window, whatever the thing is that's repeatable, that your business is really built on, that's happening over and over again. Those are steps that need to be defined and written down. I think most people understand how to do that. Where a lot of us get hung up is when we're not delegating simple, repeatable tasks, we're delegating decisions. So maybe we hire a really high level salesperson and we're paying them a lot of money. We didn't hire them so that we could dictate everything that they do. We hired them so that we don't have to think about it. However, there are still some guidelines and best practices, some values that you as the owner, or maybe the person who was in the role previously, have learned through all of your experimenting before you committed to this sales process that you have in place. So you don't need for your high level salesperson to follow a list of 27 steps to every sale. Good luck getting a salesperson to follow a list of 27 steps. But you might have 3 non-negotiables, 3 things that have to be true for every sale, 5 best practices when you're talking with our customers. There's a pattern somewhere in there, even if it feels intuitive to you, just like a gut instinct. If it's something that you've done over and over and you're getting consistent results, there's still a pattern, a process, and it can be defined so that you can delegate those decisions. It can be defined and documented. Finally, the distribute is sharing it with the right people at the right time. So this is where I will talk about Trainual. So to dive a little bit deeper into how do we distribute this documentation to the right people at the right time and make sure that they actually got it. Some ways that this does not tend to work very well most of the time is you have some stuff in Google, you have some stuff in OneDrive, you have some stuff in Dropbox, you have some stuff on sticky pads and notepads on your monitor. That can work fine if you have 2 or 3 people on your team and there's not much that needs to be documented because you're a small, really small team. Once you get past this, somewhere around the 10-person mark on your team, you're adding people, which means you're adding repeatability, which means you're adding complexities to your organization. You cross this 10 or 12 or 15-ish mark, that stops working for you and starts really working against you, that you have your really incredible and beautiful documentation spread all over the place. So this is where Trainual comes in, and other softwares like it. They call themselves, Trainual calls themselves business playbook software. You might know the category as learning management system. It's similar. Anything that's helping you build a unique knowledge base for your company that's based on your processes. So I partner with Trainual and have for about the past 4 years, maybe 4.5. I found it in early 2020, and I thought, this is what I wish I'd had when I started my first business in the hospitality industry. If we were hiring 25-ish college students every spring, so we were seasonal. And so I thought, what if every time something changed, instead of sending an email to college students in the summer and then waiting a week for the next staff meeting, I could just click a button and easily shoot out the updated process and know that it had actually been received. Then what if I didn't only know that they got it, but I was able to ask a 1 or 2 or 3 question quiz to make sure that I'd communicated effectively and the message had been understood and really received? What if I could have shared training for the people driving the trucks only to the people driving the trucks, and training on cleaning only to the people cleaning? Because like Justin said, nobody reads a 500-page document training manual. But the more people you add to your team, the more documentation you need. And so maybe the company has 500 pages. That doesn't mean every single individual person needs 500 pages. I'm not going to read 500 pages. And then what if, so this is still me wishing I had this 15 years ago in my first business, because who knows what would have happened if I'd had 5 extra hours week after week after week. So there's new AI functions in Trainual, really similar Chat GPT style, where you can capture what you're doing on your screen. So what if I'd been delegating QuickBooks categorization, and I could go, here's how to do it. The AI tool makes a really good attempt at guessing what I'm doing and creating documentation, generating words on the page for me to edit and share. That's the kind of thing that makes us just not want to do this at all, not want to commit to a process and have it documented, because we know it's going to change and it will change, and that is good and necessary. If it can become easier and easier to update it as it changes, then we can keep people all aligned around the same way of doing it. So one thing that I'm going to share in the chat when I'm done is a link to the delegation planner. It's the newest tool that Trainual released, because I think if you are interested, if you feel like Trainual might solve a problem for you, then use this QR code and let me know if it's not working. But another thing that you might find interesting is the delegation planner. So similar to an org chart, which says who's responsible for what at a really high level, the delegation planner is a tool that you document who's responsible for more specific things as they're changing rapidly. So let's say you have a director of marketing. They're responsible for 12 things primarily, but they've been in their role 9 months. It's time to add to their team. They need a direct report. Let's take 4 of those things and share it with the new role. So again, with smaller companies where you might be doubling year after year or every couple of years and things are changing, it's a tool to keep everybody on the same page and stay updated. So I'm going to end just by recapping here and talking about if you think you have a process problem, if you can put it into one of these 3 categories, which I think is a good prompt for a breakout session if we do breakouts. And then if you find yourselves in one of these 3 categories, what should you do next? What's the actual solution? So if you think that you're having trouble deciding because you realize, well, the reason our documentation and our Trainual isn't working is because there are 17 different ways that people are doing this thing, then you or your leadership team or whoever you want needs to go back to the drawing board with deciding and committing to the one way that's going to work until you find a better way. Only you can do this. You can find outside advisors. You can find your local EOS implementer, but only you or your team internally can do this. Nobody can do it for you, the deciding and the committing. The documenting, the writing it down. I mentioned people struggle here with just getting it out of their brain, putting words to it that are easy for other people to understand. So this is what I help people with. Anybody who has some sort of outside perspective can help you with this. Somebody who knows enough about what you do, maybe somebody in your forum, maybe somebody on another team within your company who doesn't do the thing every day, can ask you good clarifying questions, help to really turn your unconscious knowledge into conscious knowledge that you can document. So that's a good next step. Find somebody with a little bit of outside perspective to help you extract that essential knowledge. And then if you think you have the 2 things in place, deciding and documenting, but it's all over the place, Google, Microsoft, Dropbox, whatnot, pull it all together into the same place. It's magic. It sounds too easy, but it's magic. Keep it in one place. Try Trainual. If you have only 2 or 3 people, keep it in one long running Google Doc or Microsoft Word doc. And try something like Trainual as you add to your team. So here's where you can find me if you have follow-up questions. And I think we will go to Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth and Justin. So first question from David Fredrickson is, Elizabeth, is any way you can show us a live demo version of training?
I certainly can. Should I do that right now? Should we do that? Maybe that's a question for Marla or Samira. Yes? Okay. Let me pull it up. Could we do another question and I'll get it pulled up and then we can come back to this?
So I had one question. So I document some of the things that I do, but I'm doing it in case I get hit by a train that somebody could step in and do, you know, all the little detail things that I do. But I think that's different from what you're talking about. How do you how do you delineate between, you know, what's really, you know, core and critical, and what are the little details that, like you say, you don't want it to be a 500-page document?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say something really quick and then it looks like Justin has something to say too. I would say the delineation, I think, is just in use case. So I think there's no reason to document anything unless you have a good reason to do it. If your reasoning, if your motivation is more risk management is what you're talking about, really. Somebody gets hit by a bus, you want to have enough to go on to figure out how to do their job. Then that determines the level of detail that you need in that documentation, because that's how it's being used. If your motive is our onboarding and training process is really chaotic and we want it to be better and faster, and we have 60 people and we're hiring 10 people a month, and we need to solve people problems, then that you're doing the same thing, but probably with more detail. That determines you need a lot more steps. You need a lot more context for these new people that you're using because you're using it for training. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Yes. Also, are there things that are so core that, you know, we sometimes paste it on the wall, we frame it, and is that part of what you recommend, that you say, hey, this is so critical to what you do that this doesn't just need to be in a something you have to look up, but this needs to be in front of everybody all the time?
I I think that goes to those guidelines that Elizabeth was talking about earlier. And to me, those are your core values, right? This is the framework in how we make our decisions. And absolutely, you should frame that and put it on the wall. And then there may be use cases. I have a client that they manufacture chairs. They have like parts of that process in the assembly line, right? We do this every single time. We hit this checklist when they're packaging it. Yeah, they don't want anybody looking that up. They want that checklist right in front of them so they can check it off as they do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I would add one thing, that a business playbook, which I didn't really define, but just kind of this collection of your processes, whether it lives in Trainual or wherever, there's a purpose for that, but it's not meant to be the only training tool that you have. It's not meant to replace 100% of your onboarding and training and kind of knowledge sharing. There's a place for it. So if I have a law firm client, most of their knowledge base, their playbook, lives in Trainual. a manufacturing client, that's not the case because they run by the lean methodology. So they have certain things posted in the area where they can see it. They're not going to stop and flip through their phone for 5 minutes to find out what's the process for this thing. It's not what it's designed to do. And it's also not meant to replace on-the-job training. If the work is manual and it happens on the job, then there's still a place for on-the-job training, and Trainual can significantly reduce the time that takes.
Very good. So is it practical to do us a brief demo? And if not, we
Sure.
can go straight into breakouts, but I think we'd love to see a demo.
Yeah, what I'll do, can everybody see? You should see the word home right here. My browser is.
Mhm.
So this is my demo account. I'll just kind of point out what's maybe my top few benefits of it that I like. So you can, because I know it's hard to visualize, like, how does this actually work? How's this going to solve my problem? So again, this is Trainual is not a silver bullet that's solving every process problem or people problem that you could ever have. It's specifically solving the problem of sharing your processes with your people and keeping them updated. So the home screen here, this is my to-do list. This is what I'm signed in as myself. And so my manager, my fake manager that I don't have, has assigned to me all of these trainings. And somebody in a different department has been assigned a totally different set of trainings. It's part of a curated learning path for my role. Here is all of the content that is assigned to different people. So let me just show you what a training subject actually looks like and get it into view mode or in admin mode right now. So this is a welcome to the company subject for a fake roofing company. So it's a pretty simple text-based editor, not super fancy. It's simple to read, simple to organize. You can add in fun GIFs if you want to, and any kind of videos that you want. If they live on a hosting site like YouTube or Vimeo or Loom. So maybe you have a welcome message, or maybe you have a 30-second video. Hey, here's my favorite way to document something. Do a Loom video. Here's the process change to this thing that we talked about 6 months ago. Loom's going to automatically transcribe it, copy it, paste it, put it into Trainual, make it do 5 seconds of editing to make it a little prettier. And you have a new process documented by talking into your computer screen and pasting it into Trainual. So that's what it actually looks like. I know I'm moving really fast, but I don't want to get too in the weeds. You have groups. So you have different groups, much like you would in a CRM or something like that, where you're segmenting your customer population. You're segmenting your employee population to share different things with different people. And then anybody that you want to be able to manage, they're seeing user data in here. So they're learning, they're checking in, how's progress going for this trainee? Did they pass or fail the quiz? Where are we? That's the really high level, and I am more than happy to do another one sometime if anybody wants more info.
So Jessica Walker wants to know, what does the employee view look like?
So depending on their user permission level, and there's 5 different ones, the most basic, they're only going to have their home screen. And so just pretend like none of this stuff is here. So they just have their to-do list, and it's in the order that's been set for them. And then when they click into it, it's in view mode. So this is exactly what they're going to see.
And I believe that James Fields would like to ask a question. He's got his hands raised.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. I'm off camera, but I promise that I'm totally put together and I look great. I just am choosing to not be on camera. Uh, so I'm almost sort of overwhelmed at all of the possible applications for this stuff. I have some teams where it's a bunch of really smart people and they're probably all doing 90% of the stuff the same way, and it would be best for them to take the best 90% and make 100%. And then I've got, maybe small teams where there's people that are doing something the same way, but we don't actually review what that way is, and it's probably really inefficient. And I'd be like, I don't even know where to start, but I don't want to do some, gigantic $50,000 project right now. I don't know, Elizabeth. What do you say to somebody like me who's totally showered and is wearing a collar?
I would say a couple things. One, start working on something if there's a problem. So I think it's easy to think, oh my gosh, what could possibly be, like, you're looking at your entire business. How many problems are there? How many efficiencies could we find? That's true. But start with, where's there an actual negative impact, and work on it one thing at a time. The problem is it's an infinite, never ending process. But the good thing is it can be done one bite at a time. And so start there. And if if it's working well enough, then there's going to be plenty of other problems to deal with that are more important. The second thing I would point out, one of the things that I like about Trainual that it kind of automates in a way, I'm going to go back into edit mode. So you can set each training to, set a reminder to periodically verify content. So this is one of the ways that just the thinking about it can be automated. So you could say, okay, every year or 30 days or 6 months or 5 years or whatever works for this particular thing, because it doesn't need to be all the time. The person who owns it is going to revisit it and take 30 minutes to update it. In doing so, they're going to make a few small improvements a little bit at a time. It's just a natural byproduct of the documenting. So I think having some kind of schedule where you share the workload with other people and you're just regularly taking a look at one process at a time can make it a little bit less overwhelming.
That's amazing. Thank you.
And Danielle also has a question.
Thanks, guys, for being here and doing this. It's been an awesome 45 minutes. My question is for Justin. I know that you and I, when we met previously, we were just kind of talking through what EOS is and the program. So once you set up a client to be able to operate on EOS themselves, are you checking in with them after, like periodically after, or how do you almost be their accountability partner for them to be accountable to their staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I do, I stay very much in the coaching space. So when I'm working with clients, I'm meeting with them on a quarterly basis. And everything that I do is focused on setting them up for independence. And so typically within about 2 years, they graduate and they're off and running on their own, and they have accountability built into the system with a lot of the different tools, with clear lines of accountability, roles and responsibilities and stuff like that. So really what I'm doing is sort of on a quarterly basis, holding up the mirror. Where are we at on those commitments that we said we were committed to? Where are we at on getting our processes documented? Where are we at on all of these different things? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, I think it's time to go into breakouts, and we're tasked with asking 3 questions. If we're having issues with processes, we're asked, what category does your issue fall into? Is it deciding what the process should be? Is it documenting it, or is it distributing it to your team? So I think Marla or Samir is going to start putting us into rooms.
Hey there.
Well,
Such good stuff.
yeah.
Hi. I'm so glad you could be with us, even though Mark is on vacation. Where is he? Can we share or is it?
I don't know. I don't know why I couldn't. They went
He's
they went
somewhere.
to
Good for him.
they went to Costa Rica for a few
Fun.
days. And so yeah, their
Good
daughter
for
turned
them.
16 in the process. So a fun little birthday trip too for her. But
That's
yeah.
awesome. Love it. Good for them.
Well, we only have 2 minutes left, but if anybody has one, a great takeaway they want to share real quick, fire away. Otherwise, thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's exciting that Elizabeth is now working with not only Nashville, but Charlotte and Atlanta. And Justin, we enjoyed your presentation and look forward to having you guys in our forums, right? And I hope everybody has a great weekend. Enjoy the lack of rain this weekend.
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. And there's a link if y'all would do that survey and we'll send you one as well. And then Justin had said there was a ask to share slides. So we'll share Justin's, and Elizabeth, if yours can be shared too. If y'all get those to me, I'll get them out to everybody. It was so informative, so many takeaways.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. See you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you.